Guys, thank you for taking your time to join this session. As I had earlier introduced myself, my name is Jabez Magomere, also an MC, professional MC. I'm currently an Android engineer at Twiga Foods. So if you don't know more about my Twiga Foods company, Twiga Foods is basically we exist in the distribution and supply chain of FMCG and FFB. So FMCG is fast movable consumer goods, things like flour and flour. So just anything that you can find at your local kiosk. And then also FFV is bananas. Most of you guys know us for bananas, but yeah. So to be able to support this whole business needs, we've automated our process at Twiga Foods. So from paying of farmers, so when we go to harvest farmers, we pay them directly via M-Pesa in 24 hours. So that whole system is automated, and I work there as an Android engineer. Something else I can't forget to say is that I run a lot. Like a lot is, I try run like 100 kilometers per week. So I just had to put my personal best there for 5K. Yeah, Kipchoge does this in probably half my time, but yeah, it's always fun just to say this. So if you're a runner, always hit me up. Yeah, and you can follow me on Twitter at MCJB. You can tweet at me, Android questions, and also you can follow me on GitHub. And yeah, so yeah, I think we'll get started. So I want to tell you the Twiga story of modularization and dynamic features. And why I think this is very important is I think we need to understand what the problem is, because every tool exists there to solve a particular problem. So you just don't delve deeper into a tool until you understand what is the problem that exists, what is the status quo, and why was this tool necessarily implemented or introduced to solve certain problems. So yeah, so I'll tell you the Twiga story of modularization and dynamic features. If you guys remember this funny Zuma speech, he couldn't say the word beginning, so he kept on saying in the beginning a couple of times, jumbled it up. So yeah, you can give me feedback if you think I'm too fast or you can't be able to hear me. So yeah, so I'm just going to tell you about the pain points that Twiga faced, and that is why we went and thought about the idea of dynamic features. So the first one was team growth. Now, I did my internship at Twiga last year. That was between January and April, before they gave me a full-time offer starting this year. And when initially I had joined the team, there were only 2 Android developers. Now, meaning having 2 individual contributors to the Android code base. So let's say you have a given code base and there are only 2 people contributing to it, yeah? It's pretty simple to manage it, because with 2 people, it's less friction. You can be able to easily manage the friction that exists within the team. But me being added into the picture and also the team growing meant that we had to look for better ways to be able to manage the code base to reduce the friction that exists between developers. If you guys know, developers are highly opinionated people, and the friction that can exist if you haven't set up proper structures can really haunt you as a team. The other thing is not scalability internally, but also business needed to scale in multiple regions. So I think yesterday we opened operations in Kisumu, and there are plans to even scale it across Africa. Now you'll find that if you're scaling to multiple regions, if you haven't built software or haven't architectured your software in a way that can allow you to say, for example, if your manager or the company says we want to go to Uganda today, have you built the application in a way that you can be able to seamlessly scale to somewhere like Uganda? And then also releasing of features to Play Store. We wanted a way that can be able to easily release features. So that's all about maintainability. Guys, it was becoming a pain to add a feature to the application. Now, we work in sprints of 2 weeks, and adding just one particular thing on the feature was very hard, because here's the thing, me as an intern, I used to be scared. If I touch one thing, you guys know the domino effect. So if I touch one thing, the whole code base falls. So it was very hard to like debug, and you know, something developers are, we spend most of our times trying to read other people's code. And your ability to be able to read other people's code and understand it depends on how it was written, how it was structured. and also affects the maintainability. Our code base is currently 4 years old, and I don't know how many of you guys are still working with code you wrote 4 years ago. If you're writing code 4 years ago, I don't know how many of you are still working with code you wrote 4 years ago. But debugging became a pain. Something else that really, so most of you guys, when you start an Android Studio project, you're used to this, yeah? You see one module, and I don't know if you guys have ever asked yourself the role of this module, how it looks, and the details around it. So initially, our code base was like this. Everything was jumbled up inside the application. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but in most cases, if you look at most applications that you build, especially if you're an Android developer, the first module that Android Studio out of the box gives you is the app module. Now, the characteristics of the app module is that it has the com.android.application in the Gradle as a setting. So you only have one module, and that is that basically is it. So why I say this poses a maintainability challenge is, look at this, yeah? So we had, this is just a snippet of our code base. So we have three key functions of the business. We had PH, which is warehouse. So this is all about the warehouse functions. And then we have sales. This is all about selling and how we can be able to, place, people can be able to be delivered for their orders. And then we had sourcing, which involved buying produce from farmers. So you find that these three different functions were all jumbled up together into the application. Now look at this XML. So if you are a new person getting into this code base, if you try search for something, it was hectic. And then this is the other pain of maintainability. If you have one single app module, if you change, let's say you change an XML called activity farm, Android Studio will compile the whole project, and other things which you haven't touched, such as sales and PH, will increase the compilation time. So that brought to our next issue of build time. If you're an Android Studio developer, you know this is a pain. But sometimes you get used to it and desensitized to it. This is how I used to be like a while back. I used to say, it's not so bad, I'll wait. But then they really affect developer productivity. If your average build time is taking 5 to 10 minutes, chances are you're going to head up to Twitter or something else as Android Studio builds. And then you're going to go through this whole spiral hole, and 30 minutes later, whoop, you've lost that time. So imagine if you're doing about 30 builds in a day because of the changes. Every time you change, you do a build. If this is an average time at staking, it becomes a pain point a lot. And something else is the install APK size. Now, one characteristic you notice is that since we're developers in the African market, chances are we're building software for low-end devices. By low-end devices, I mean devices that have limited storage. So you find we really need to do great optimizations to the APK size to enable our users to install our application. And you find that you're competing with applications such as WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram and all these things. Chances are the user is going to uninstall your application. It's like basically when you guys want to install an app and Play Store tells you that size not sufficient, you'll definitely look for an application with a large APK size and then uninstall it. So yeah, so that brought us to look into the idea of dynamic features. So up to now, I've summarized what were some of our pain points. The APK size was large. That's the first thing. And we really needed a way to be able to restructure it. Now, let me tell you a scenario of how this APK size was large. So if you go back to this code, I talked about 3 key departments of the business. We had warehouse, sales, and sourcing. So we normally give loans to our vendors. So our vendors can be able to take loans from us. So what happens is when we're registering a loan to a customer, we usually capture their eKYC details. I don't know if you guys know the eKYC. So eKYC basically is their ID, their documents that they have actually signed and consented to being added. So we had a feature on the Android app that specifically was responsible for taking pictures and cropping pictures. So you find that library was adding about 20 MB to the install size. But because all this exists in this one module called app that I had already shown you, it means that users who don't necessarily use that feature have this APK installed and they're not necessarily using it. So you find when you jumble up everything, the install size of the APK gets really large, and you find that this feature is only used by a subsection of your users. Yeah. So that was those are the major challenges that we faced. And I'll just go to what dynamic features are. So Eric had asked the question of whether dynamic features can be able to be implemented in other platforms. I'm not so sure about the delivery models of other platforms, because I know on Flutter, I think you can, I don't know if it has been able to reach, I haven't played with Flutter, but I know there are different delivery models for different stores. But dynamic features is a feature that Play Store gives you. So dynamic features are Gradle modules. So a Gradle module is basically, you remember the app that I showed you, the app module? This is the default one when you create an Android Studio project that is usually shown. So dynamic features are Gradle modules that can be installed away or together with a base module. So currently when you install an application, it normally installs the base APK, and the base APK is basically the module that you specify as com.android.application, which I'll show you as we head up to the code base. So the types of dynamic features, we have install time delivery. So a feature which is specified as a dynamic feature module will be bundled together with the base APK. So I'll give you a scenario, yeah? Think about we're building, let's build a software. Let's build an application like, let's build a shopping app, for example, yeah? That allows people to shop and allows, so we have a user who can be able to shop and allows people to be able to buy goods from our people to be able to buy, and also people can be able to post products, and then something else like people can be able to shop using augmented reality, like can be able to take a photo of a product and use AR to be able to display it. So in install time delivery, this is a module that's installed together with the app. So when someone goes to Play Store to download your application, this module will be included in the install application. So this is a very good place to start from before you move on to the other models that I'll talk about. But install time basically means that this particular module gets installed into your phone at install time. So I'll give you an example of a use case. Yeah. So a use case is we have an onboarding screen that allows people to learn how to shop. Yeah. So we can be able to extract this onboarding into its own feature. And so we'll have two modules here. We'll have the application module and we'll have the onboarding module. So what will happen is if we specify that the onboarding module should be an install time, it will get installed when the user is using it. But then you realize that the onboarding feature, you only use it once, yeah? You only use an onboarding feature when you initially install the application. So the developer can be able to bundle it up together with the application and then later on uninstall it to reduce the APK size. Yeah. And then the other thing is on-demand delivery. So here's a question. 80%, here's a statistic that you should have at the back of your mind as a developer. 80% of your users are using 20% of your application. So think about this. You build a very robust application with so many features, but 80% of your users will only get to your application for the core needs. It's like Uber, or when you log into an Uber application, chances are you just want to order a ride and leave. So in our shopping example, we have, for example, a feature that allows people to take photos of similar products that they may want to buy. So there's no need of bundling that feature together into the application because 80% of your users won't use it. So you can be able to use on-demand delivery. So in on-demand delivery is when the developer says, when someone clicks this button to take a photo, that is the time I will load it from Play Store and download it. And you can leverage on, I'll show you later on the code, is that Play Core library gives you ability to be able to load and uninstall modules depending on that. The other thing we'll talk about is conditional delivery. So we all have different devices, yeah? So imagine we're building an application for security that relies on, we have a feature that relies on biometrics. But remember that not all phones support fingerprint scanners. So you can be able to set this feature that you could tell Play Store that I have a feature here that uses fingerprint. However, I want it only to be delivered to people's devices whose fingerprint, who their hardware support a fingerprint. So basically, in conditional delivery, the developer, when you're creating a module, I'll show you in Android Studio, you specify the minimum requirements for your feature. So you can be able to say, I want to target this hardware, and you can even say the locale. So let's say, for example, the Twiga use case, we're building an application for users both in Kenya and Uganda. You can roll out a feature and specify that you want only the feature to be rolled out in Kenya by specifying the locale. Have you ever wondered how, let's say Instagram, how they usually do their updates on, and you see, or Twitter, you find that the feature is being launched in US or being A/B tested in particular countries. So you can be able to set that to be conditionally delivered. So the difference between conditional and on-demand is, in conditional, Play Store is the one that handles for you and checks whether the device has the given configuration. So in our use case for shopping with augmented reality, you realize that not all devices support augmented reality. So instead of shipping the whole code base as a monolith or as one application, you can literally split it out as a feature module and then deliver it conditionally. Something else we'll talk about is instant delivery. Now, instant delivery was a fun one, yeah? So imagine that users can be able to interact with your application without having to install it. So think about a game app. We're building a game app and we just want a user to try level 1 before they decide whether to install the app. So they can be able to use instant delivery to allow users to review your application. If you go to Google Play, you'll be able to see a try now button or an install button. So there's this library from Play Store called Google Play Instant that allows you to be able to try out features of applications as instant apps. So you can be able to try just that one level. But the downside of this is that Play Store only allows you a maximum size of 15 MB to be able to use this. Yeah. So those are like the 4 types of dynamic features. We have the install time. This is what is bundled up together with the application. We have on demand. This is where the developer uses a certain logic to decide whether to install it or not install it. And then we have conditional. This is where you basically check certain requirements. And then we have instant delivery, where your users can try out an application. So let's talk about getting started with dynamic features. So to get started with dynamic features, the first thing we have to do is modularization. I don't know if anyone has heard of modularization, but basically what modularization is you guys, I'm sure you've heard of the concept of microservices. So I like to think about modularization as microservices, but for Android. If you go back to this slide before, let me just go back. If you look at this, we have one module called app. So we have 3, I told you we had 3 business functions at Twiga: PH, sales, and sourcing. So all these things are bundled up together into one application. But then in microservices or in modularization, it's the concept of breaking down your application into discrete modules, into separate components that can be installed autonomously. So let's think about how we can break down our shopping app, for example. So let's break down the shopping app example. We have the login feature. Login is basically login and registration. We can break it into its own module called authentication module. And then we have the home screen that shows products. We can be able to break that down into something called list products, a feature called list products. And then we have something, let's say payments. Payments can be its own feature on its own. So this talk doesn't necessarily focus on modularization, but there are lots of benefits that you get with modularization that I will explain. So yeah, so this is an example of modularization. Now, what you're used to, for example, is you're probably used to this app module, yeah? In most cases, you're just used to Android Studio giving you an app module. But then Android Studio has the option to be able to create extra modules. So I'll use this example. So when Android Studio creates your app module, this module uses the plugin called com.android.application. This usually denotes the main base APK that is installed in devices. And then we usually have 2 modules, and then another module. So I'll tell you the difference between the modules. So we can have an application module, and then we can have module 1 as a library module. So I'll explain the difference. So a com.android.library is basically a module which you can specify your functions, your util functions, or where you want to share code. So you find that when you modularize, there are things, for example, you'd want to share between module 2 and module 3. A simple example, if you're in the Android world, we may want to display snack bars or display toasts to the users. So all that logic can be placed in module 1, and this can be called, for example, core. So in this one, the app will depend on module 1. And then we can have module 2 and module 3 as dynamic features. So here's the difference. And it may be a bit hard to understand, but you'll be able to get it. So dynamic features, the dependency is inversed. So application does not depend on the dynamic feature. The dynamic feature is the one that depends on the app. That is why you have this solid line showing that dependency. An easy explanation of this is your application module is what is installed first. Yeah. So because your application module is installed first and you want to install module 2 or module 3 at a later time, these two modules app can't rely on them because application module will require them to be installed, which beats the logic of dynamic features. So that is why the dependency is inverse. But this dotted line shows that the application module can be able to access these dynamic features at a later time. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get into action. I'll just share my Android Studio screen. You will tell me yes if you can be able to. Let me just give a new share. Yes, kindly give me a thumbs up if you can be able to see. Let me go to it. Yes, can be able to see Android Studio. So we'll start a new project so that I explain to you from the word go. So starting a new project, if you're in Android Studio, you basically know new, and we'll start a new project. Let's use an empty activity, and then we can call it demo. Oh yeah, DevC, so Nairobi. Basically that's language Kotlin, and you can specify finish.
Hey, Jabez.
Yep.
Can you kindly zoom in the screen a little bit?
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just creating the. Sure, I will zoom in just in a few. Just a moment. I'll just put it in presentation. Let's create a new project and then I'll put it in presentation mode. I'll just create it. Yes, DevC Nairobi. So let me share it. There. Share. Let me set it to presentation mode so that everyone can be able to. Yes. But then I wanted us to see the. Yes. I don't know if you guys can be able to see the project structure. I'll just zoom in I'll get into presentation mode when I need to show you guys the code. But right now I wanted us to start with the project structure. So I don't know if it's visible, the project structure, the way it is currently. App manifest.
It's visible.
Okay. So basically, in most cases, when you create an Android application from Android Studio, the template that it gives you is this. We have one Gradle module called App, and it has its own Gradle configuration. And when you come to this Gradle configuration, this is where I will just enter presentation mode. Yes. So I don't know if you guys can be able to see this plugin at line 2, com.android.application. So this is what basically denotes your application. Let me just, okay, background, hide notification. Okay, we're good to go. So this plugin, com.android.application, is what normally is what normally is in the base application. So the base APK, and Android Studio allows only one module to have the com.android.application. So this is what you normally see when you first download, when you first set up an Android Studio project. So yeah, so I want to show you something else. When you come to the manifest, you can be able to see manifest, basically the file where you define different things about the project that the Android operating system can be able to use, or Play Store to be able to know how to set up your app. So we basically have an application with a main activity and its own Gradle, and then you have the project Gradle and stuff like that. So what if I say I want to add a new module? So adding a new module, let's say we're building the shopping, yeah? If we have the app module, what we can come and do is you just come to file, I think even on Windows as well, and you want to specify a new module, yeah? So I want you to look at the different types of module that you can be able to set up. So we have an Android library, a dynamic feature module, and an instant dynamic feature module. So we'll first set up dynamic feature module. Let's say we want to set up an onboarding screen. So we'll set the module name to onboarding, and then we will select the base application. Now the base application is the base APK upon which our dynamic feature can be able to be installed on top of. And then we can be able to say next, and then we'll specify a module title. So this module title is what will be used when as a visibility to the users when we're downloading it at a given time. So I'm able to say onboarding. Yes, and then we have different configurations. So we can say include module at install time. Why? Because we want the onboarding module to be delivered when someone first installs the application. And then we usually select this fusing. Something I forgot to tell you is that dynamic features are only supported from Android 5.0, which is minimum SDK 21. So why you enable fusing is you enable fusing to tell Play Store that include this module on devices lower than Android 5.0. So what fusing basically will do is nothing will be dynamically delivered, everything will be bundled up. So just know the caveat around dynamic features is if you're targeting devices below 5.0, just know that if you enable fusing, it will be installed together with the application. And that is it. But in most chances, when you're selecting a new project, if you're targeting, you'll be able to see the number of users you can limit, for example, with a given SDK. So click finish. Android Studio will do its build for us, configure the projects, build successful, yes. So I don't know if you guys have realized a new thing. There's a new module called onboarding right below app. So we'll delve into a bit onboarding, and then I'll explain some things. So let me just enter presentation mode for this manifest. Awesome. So I hope you can see it clearly. So manifest file, if you're in the Android world, you definitely know, I don't know how in Flutter you define those things, but in Android, I know the manifest is a file where you define your configurations for your activities, for example, your services, your broadcast receivers, basically Android application components, as well as your permissions. So this is where, for example, you would define users permission. If a module is going to use internet permission, that's manifest does that. So, but I want us to focus on this portion of code from line 16 to 13. So we'll start with it simple. So Android Studio does this for you out of the box. So what you do find is that this XMLNS it basically imports an XML namespace called distribution, and it knows where to pick it from. That's why if you remove this, you won't be able to use namespace. Is basically an import. So yeah, if you're developing, I know you basically know how to import stuff. So in XML, that's what it does. So we basically want to import the distribution namespace that allows us to define these things. So the first thing we define is we want to define a module, and then we want to say instant is equals to false. So this flag, this instant, is what defines whether a module can be an instant app or not an instant app. So we don't want this to be an instant app. We want the users to be able, this to be actually downloaded. So we'll set it to false. And then the title, we'll set it to onboarding. This is basically a screen is set for you. So this is the title of the module. This is what you will use to request to download. So if you want to, if you're using the Playco, they can be able, you have a function, you have a feature where you can specify which module you want to install. And then we have the delivery. So remember when you talked about the 4 different types of delivery modules? So this, we want it bundled up together with the app. So we specify it as install time. And then fusing, we've enabled fusing, so you can disable it as well. So you can specify false. And if we specify false for this module, it means that on lower devices, this feature module won't be bundled up together. So basically, that's what you get. Just exit presentation mode and then show you something else. So I just want you to focus on the project structure here. On the project structure, if you want to come to Gradle scripts, you'll realize that onboarding has its own Gradle configuration. So the libraries you specify here will only be accessible to awesome. So the libraries you specify here. So if you're in the Android world, you basically know Gradle allows you to bring imports of the libraries you want to use, and then does the handling for you, downloads them and bundles them into your application. So in the given case, I want us to look at different things. So the first one is I want you to look at line 28, implementation project app. So what this means is that your dynamic feature depends on app, not the other way around. Your dynamic feature depends on app. That is why you can be able to access classes that are in app from your dynamic feature. So I'll just show you an example. Yeah. Let's exit here. So let's create a class in our app module, and we can call it, for example, new Kotlin class. Let's call it util class. Yeah. This is just an example. May not be the best practice, but yes. So let's create, for example, extension function that on an activity and want to display a toast. Yeah. So you can basically say display toast. And then we want to take a message as part of our parameters. Then we want to define the duration of our toast, which is basically an integer, and we can set the default to toast length duration. I think I'll look at it. We'll just look at it before, but yeah. Do that. Yes. So making a toast is toast dot make test. So this duration here, we can give it a constant toast dot length, once length short. Yeah. So basically that will take the where you want to display it. So this, and then pass in the message, then the duration, and then want to show. So basically a simple extension function, we've defined it inside the app module. So look at the package, package.com.dev.devc.nairobi. So let me just exit presentation mode so that, so yeah. So when we come to, we've defined a util. When we come to our onboarding, we can be able to, let's create an activity, for example. Create an activity, basic, you can say this is onboarding activity. Yeah, then finish. Yes. So we have an onboarding activity. that is there for us. So I'll just let's remove this because we won't be using it. So let me enter presentation mode. So yeah, so since we're in the dynamic feature module, because it depends on app, we can be able to access classes and files that are in app. So let's say you want to display a toast, so you can be able to say, I think indexing is not happening, so we won't be able to presentation mode. I think Android Studio is still, yeah, let it finish importing. Awesome. Yeah. So let's just enter presentation mode again so that I show you. Yes. So you can be able to say call a method display toast. Yeah. The method we defined in the app module and then display hi. So if you look at the import, you find that this is being imported from DevC Nairobi, which is our main app module. So this was just to clarify that a dynamic feature depends on app. So you can be able to access content that is in the app. So let's create another module so that I show you, because creating modules is really easy. So we have app module and we have onboarding module. Let's say we have a module for displaying products. So all you need to do is come and create file and specify new module, and then we'll say, let's say, okay, so before we get there is we want to, let's create a first the products module. So we'll specify that, and then same process, specify the name, and we want it to rely on the base, so that's okay. And then next, products, and then we want this to be downloaded when we want, yeah, on demand. So you can specify that you want it to be on demand delivery only. Fusing is enabled. Remember, I told you the reason why we enable fusing is to enable support backward compatibility for older devices. So something else I want you to notice is, let's go to the Gradle of the application, and I'll enter presentation mode so that you see something. So here, you do realize that we have two dynamic features. So the only difference is the main base application, the ID uses a plugin com.android.application, and we define two dynamic features. This is why I was saying that app transitively doesn't necessarily fully depend on the dynamic features, but we define them here. So these dynamic features, when we define them here, basically tells app that I have these two features that can be dynamically installed. Yeah. So something else that I want you to show is, let's go to the Gradle for products. I want you to notice something. A dynamic feature plugin does not import com.android.application. It uses com.android.dynamic feature, and it implements, it pulls, it's be able to access classes that are in app. Yeah. So that is so next, let's go to the manifest for products. Yeah, I want you to show you something. So yeah, so the difference here is, if you notice, the other module that was being bundled at install time is here, line 10. If we change this, we can change it to install time. This will be bundled together with the app, but then we can specify each to be on demand, meaning that it will be installed when the developer wants it to be installed, given a basic some logic. So yeah, and that's the same logic as well for dynamic features, for an on-demand dynamic feature. Let's create a last one so that I show you. So file, let's create a new module, and want it to be installed at, so yeah, so want it to be installed, a dynamic feature, want it to be instant. So let's say in our application, we have a survey, let's say a quiz, yeah? And this quiz, we only want people to try it out. We don't want people to install the application for them to have to use it. So we just say instant dynamic feature, and then, Android Studio really messes up this thing when let me just exit presentation mode so that I can be able to create it. So file, new, module, and then new module, and then it's an instant dynamic feature. So Android Studio gives you this already, instant dynamic feature. Then you can be able to specify a survey or a quiz. Let's say it's a quiz, yeah? And then you can be able to specify that the base is DevC, it pulls from up there. And then you can be able to specify module title, quiz, next, and yeah. So if you come to the project, you'll realize that we have 4 modules. We have the application Gradle module, the onboarding, products, and the quiz. So the only difference is that in the quiz, the manifest I had shown you is that the distribution is instant is set to true. I don't know if you guys can see this, but here, line 7, instant is set to true, and the minimum this size of this feature can be is 15 MB. Those are the requirements that have been set by Play Store. So that's it. Yeah. So last thing I want to show you is one of the things I also want to show you is let's say we want to share logic between all the modules. So this is when you'll create a Android library that is reusable. So all you need to do is to come to File, select New, new module, and then you can be able to specify that you want it to be an Android library. So you can call it core library, and then Android Studio will do its thing, build for you, and there we have core library. So in core library, you can be able to access classes, you can be able to write logic that you want to share across all modules. Yeah, so that is a major part of initializing the dynamic feature. So creating them is basically simple. Android Studio gives you that feature to be able to create it and view it. So next up, something else I also want to show you is that the settings. Here. So in the settings, this is what allows Android Studio to be able to view your modules. So you can be able to see it has included all the modules that we've created. I talked of Twiga that one of the things that it was a pain point for us was the build times. So with Android Studio, you can be able to load and unload modules. Let's say you're in a team and you're working on onboarding, yeah? You don't need products and quiz in there. So all you need to do is specify load/unload modules. So you can be able to unload quiz and unload products, those two, and then specify, okay, then you won't be able to see them. Yeah, so that can really improve your build times. Something else that you can do is in Gradle.property, should be Gradle.properties. Yes, you can specify parallel here to true. So you can say, I think I'll just show you a project where I have specified the parallel to true, then we'll be able to see it. So yeah, so right now I'll just share an app I did recently. New share, Playground. So I built this app called Playground. Let me close here so I don't confuse you. So Playground basically has 3 modules. So it has entertainment, news, and weather. So all these are different modules. It's just an app, a lifestyle app that people can use to get news, entertainment, and also their weather. So something that you notice is all these are different dynamic modules. So they can be able to be installed at different times when the user needs to use them. That's why you notice that this can be changed from install time, and then you can select it to be on demand. So have you ever wondered how Play Store is able to do this? Is Play Store will generate 4 APKs. It will generate your app, your base.apk. It will create another APK called entertainment.apk, news.apk, weather.apk. So all these 3 different APKs will be generated by Android Studio when you're running, for example, a test project. So something else that you may wonder is, so how can we be able to navigate from app module to this other dynamic feature modules? So let's say you have the base module, but then you haven't installed entertainment or news or weather module. Yeah. So there are two options to be able to load dynamic modules. Number one, you can use the Playcore library. I'll share links and references into this. Playcore library gives you great functions which you can be able to leverage on to install modules. The other thing you can use on, which I have used for this project to make it easier, is dynamic navigation. So dynamic navigation, if either of you has worked with navigation components, dynamic navigation has support for dynamic features. So I'll just share this, just enter presentation mode on this file. Nope, where is it here? Here. So I have 3 fragments. And so I have a first fragment, for example, news, which is in the news module. I have another fragment called entertainment in the entertainment module. And I have another fragment called weather in the weather module. So using dynamic navigation, if a user navigates to this news module, and this title of news has to be the same as the title of your module, what happens is that dynamic navigation will automatically download for you this module. So you don't have to care about installing it on writing that logic, which is not a lot. You just have to, it's just a logic you write to listen to changes as Play Store downloads this module. So if you use dynamic navigation, which I'll share links into it, you can be able, the navigation library handles downloading for you automatically. So that is it into navigation. Let me just exit presentation mode so that I show you something else. I hope I'm not running out of time. Should be in 5 minutes and then I'm done. So something else that is usually a bit complex, but you may look into, Haron has written an article on this as well. You should definitely share it, is build source. So you notice that when you have different dynamic feature modules, remember I told you you can configure different libraries for each module. So how this saves you is, remember my example I gave you for our feature at work. We had one feature that was using a library that was using 20 MB. So in this given case, you can put that library to be used specifically in the dynamic feature module. Now, let's look at build source. What build source does is it allows you to share and manage dependencies across your whole project. So if you have, for example, if you're using Room or you're using material library, you don't want one module to use one material library 1.0 and another one is using 1.1 alpha, for example. So here you define a build source where you specify the dependencies of all your project. So all your versions are contained, here. So you notice these are the things I'm using for my project and I want to manage them from one central point. So this is where I manage all of them. So to wrap it up, I'll just go to, let me share. Yes. So just to wrap it up, today we basically tried to do an intro into dynamic features, how you can be able to set them up. You can still do this in Java or still, actually you've noticed that we haven't written any Kotlin code when setting up dynamic features. We can talk more about the installation of the modules, but today I decided it's easier if you use dynamic navigation because you don't have to go into the logic of knowing how to install or not to install modules. Something else is navigation between activities. So if you're in the app module and you want to navigate to an activity in a dynamic feature module, you basically use intents. But the difference here is you use an implicit intent and you specify the full qualified name of the activity in that specific. So if you're in the app module and you want to access, for example, onboarding activity, you have to specify I think I can just, I can't show this. Yeah, I think we can do, let me just go to the place where I was presenting and then we can write that code easily. Yeah. Here, awesome. So let's go to main activity. Yeah. In main activity, we want when a button is clicked, it navigates to a different module. So what we can do here is let's drag and drop a button. I'm not a fan of writing XML a lot, so I just drag and drop that. Let's easily constrain it to that. set a constraint for that. Want it to be center, so yep. Then let me just go to main activity. There, I want to access this class code. So let's change the button of the ideas button. Navigate to onboarding. Then in activity. So when we let's set up a function to set up button. Basically sets up a button. So can use Android Studio to generate, creates function, set up button, implement it. We want it to, once we click a button, no, not that. I don't know, I'm creating a recursive, but should be able to access a button. I don't know why it hasn't generated the, but yeah, before it generates the, I figure out why it hasn't generated the XML. I don't know why it hasn't generated the XML, but it will be something, if you were to write the pseudocode, it will be something like set on click listener, which will be like a lambda, and then we'll define an intent. So basically an intent is goes to intent, and then specify this, and then we'll set the full class name here. So you can be able to say, to set the full class name of that, of what we want to navigate to. So if we're defining that intent, we'll just say something like this, and then you'll specify the full class name of that class you want to navigate to. So in this case, it will become .devc.nairobi .onboarding activity, basically, and then you can just be able to start activity intent and pass it there. So you just have to pass the full qualified name when you're starting an intent. I don't know why this button is not being imported. I'm sure it's something to do with Kotlin synthetics, but yeah, don't want to take so much time. So, yep. I'll wrap up with saying dynamic features is something you need to consider. There's still so many things you need to consider before you choose to go to dynamic features, because there's so many things you'll have to focus on when you're doing dynamic features, such as navigation. Navigation is still a pain point. Every feature will have to have its own database, or you can modularize by layer and specify every a shared database. But one of the challenges we faced at Twiga was duplication of data, because every feature module had to have its own database. Something else that Android Studio still doesn't support, if you love writing tests, Android Studio does not support UI tests currently for dynamic feature modules. You'll have to run that on the terminal. And let's face it, if you want to solve a problem like reducing APK size, I'd rather recommend you look into things such as code shrinking, enabling ProGuard, resource optimization, and things like changing your XMLs to PNGs to WebP format, for example, to reduce APK size. And if you want to improve your build times, you can be able to still do other things to improve build time. So this is like a disclaimer. Just don't jump into dynamic features, because you can use normal modules and modularize your application and still get the benefits, but dynamic features, get a use case for it. Make sure it's solving your problem. And yeah, I think if there are any questions, I can be able to handle them.